The more you can lean on strategic capital and not just capital, the more you're going to set yourself up for success. And I didn't really realize that so much at the start, but one of my first checks was someone that we issued advisory shares with. And because he comes from more of that corporate America background, he actually hasn't been an asset to us whatsoever. And he's never been in a startup. And I don't think that people that come from this corporate America background really understand how difficult it is to get an idea off the ground.
Yeah.
And so I think the more you can align yourself with, this is actually what I need from strategic capital. And if I get this, my ball is going to be moved so much quicker.
Welcome to the Inside the Round podcast, where you get to learn about capital raising from founders who have just done it. I'm Helena Fogarty. I'm a fundraising expert who helps startups raise their seed and Series A rounds. And today I'm speaking with Ella Molony Cook, the co-founder and COO of Upper Echelon, a private network of family offices, investors, and founders redefining wealth, culture, and longevity in the age of intelligent capital. Originally from Australia, Ella is a 3-time founder with a successful exit before transitioning into the U.S. private markets. She's known for her work in operations, strategy, and community design, and for championing women in the traditionally male-dominated finance industry. Upper Echelon connects the world's most trusted capital through its flagship tier, the Inner Circle, where verified family offices, sovereign investors, and elite dealmakers collaborate on co-investments, private experiences, and opportunities that shape the future of private capital. Alongside it, the Founder AI Lab equips founders with the tools and frameworks to operate efficiently and scale intelligently in the age of AI. Having recently raised a $1.3 million pre-seed round, Upper Echelon is building trusted infrastructure for the next era of private capital, bridging investors and innovators through alignment, education, and access. So let's find out how they did it. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about you. Like, you're fascinating. You're from Australia, which in itself is interesting. But I love that you've had an exit. You're a 3-time founder, and now you've helped raise $1.3 million with Upper Echelon.
Yeah. So my previous 2 companies, they were bootstrapped. So this was my first time raising. And back in Australia, I really didn't have the experience of my fellow kind of entrepreneurial community raising. It was really more, you had an idea, you were building slowly, you leveraged, like even the advisory boards back in Australia, that wasn't a thing for me when I was in my startup. And it was very much, I was a scrappy entrepreneur that was a high school dropout. I didn't go to college. I didn't have this alumni network. So for me, my experience back in Australia was very different to my series in the US. But I'm really grateful of how much I learned in my first company, of just the mistakes and being able to leverage offshore talent and technology to be able to keep a company quite lean. And I think we've done a lot with Upper Echelon in a short period of time. So I'm super grateful, even though my entrepreneurial journey has been very different to most. I started more as an entrepreneur than doing the corporate America and transitioning. And I think I have a really unique mindset because I've always been creative of how I've approached entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I mean, can you even imagine working in a corporate office? Like, you're creating a corporate office, but can you imagine being a worker? I can't.
I couldn't. Honestly, I'm so excited now to actually go to an office, because I think being virtual for so long, it's actually taking a toll. But no, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because in real life feels so powerful to me right now in terms of interactions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the office thing. I'm not ready yet. But in real life, talking to people after years of being so virtual is very special.
It's so much more powerful now than ever with what's happening with AI, AGI. I think you can't replicate in-person relationships. And even through Zoom, I just don't feel like you have that. You don't really know someone as well. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and it's tiring.
100%. Absolutely.
I mean, I love talking to people, but at the end of the day of looking at a screen, I'm just like, oh my gosh.
100%.
Let me get outside.
The only part that I love about it is when I can go on walks outside during a meeting. I'm like, this is handy for me.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I believe in the power of bringing a team together and being able to talk through things. I think it's very hard to do that on Zoom at times.
Yeah. What personally inspired your focus on mental health and longevity?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story because my first company came from health and wellness. I realized through my dad being an entrepreneur, he very much struggled early on in life with mental health, and that very much isolated him. And I realized I took on the same path as being, a solo founder and a solo entrepreneur. I very much wanted to focus on building a community to support other founders, investors, the entire ecosystem, because I believe that especially when you're building something and maybe investors are a little bit, they're scary and they're timid, like having that peer group I think is so important. And that's really what I didn't have back in Australia. So I feel like for the first time in my life, I feel like I actually have a support system to go through this journey with, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what made you start your first company?
It wasn't an intentional, like, I'm starting a company. It was more of me and my partner at the time, we were doing Bali retreats. And so he was a personal trainer, I was a yoga instructor, and we'd bring a group of people together. We would bring some kind of influencers at that time, and we would get a location sponsored and brands involved, and we would take content with these brands. And so then we had a lot of folks reaching out to us being like, we want to come to your next retreat. And we're like, it's not a ticketed event. It was more of just like a collaboration. And so we were like, interesting, let's try our first kind of pilot retreat in Bali. And it sold out in 48 hours, our first retreat. And then we were like, this isn't really sustainable with just doing like the cash flow issues of doing a retreat is horrendous. It's the worst business model in the world. And so we realized quickly, how can we bring in corporate companies, do more corporate activations even in Australia? And then we transitioned to having an e-commerce brand. So the first element of actually starting a business wasn't intentional, but it kind of just evolved over time. And then we realized, okay, this is something where the corporate companies really needed like a structure for a quarterly kind of offsite. And we were more bringing fitness and wellness, and then they were structuring out kind of their, collateral that they wanted to go through.
Yeah, amazing. So take us from coming from Australia to the US and becoming part of Upper Echelon.
Yeah, so after COVID happened, in Australia, obviously the retreats shut down. That was a moment as being an entrepreneur where I was like, am I going to get through this? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And I think everyone went through that as a business owner, because a lot of obviously things changed and people weren't allowed outside, and it was a whole new world. But our e-commerce side, we had kind of like a fitness equipment bundle as well as a supplement brand. And the supplement brand was just a partner of ours. So all of our equipment product was actually stored at their warehouse. And we sold out very quickly. Even though like our next batch was coming from China, there was a period of time where we had nothing else to sell except for the supplements. And so because of I guess for us, we didn't realize, obviously, that COVID was happening. We didn't get to plan in advance for that. One of our competitors, their gym had shut down. And so they had all of this equipment, but they really didn't have a brand. So they ended up acquiring us. And so that was kind of a perfect transition for me to get out of that company, because at that time, my mental health wasn't doing so well because of the transition of obviously what was happening in the environment. And at that time, I was very much focused on investing in digital assets. So because of my kind of investment focus was more at the forefront, I thought that I wanted to go into real estate and more on the development feasibility study side. And then long story short, that didn't work out. I ended up saying, okay, I want to take a 6-month sabbatical. COVID was at the end. You're able to travel now. And then I decided during that time off to move to the US. And I think once I set my mind on something, I came to the US with like, okay, if I can figure out how to get here. I had no idea about the immigration process, but I got sponsored by a fintech company.
Mhm.
And so that fintech company was a Canadian startup. And I really knew the founder was struggling at that time. So I came in with the hopes of maybe I can support him he was just going through a lot, as it is for any entrepreneur. But I realized I really wasn't the right person for him. There really wasn't a dynamic where I felt like they were set up for scale. And I'm very cautious about getting involved with a project where I don't feel like we're the right fit to work together. So then I learned about M&A and pretty much went on our own independent search fund. I was looking at recession-proof businesses. And I think that very much came from, okay, we've seen what's happened with COVID. How can I put myself in a little bit better position?
Yeah.
And then we found a landscape material distribution company. Unfortunately, we didn't end up acquiring it, but it was a really great process for me because I got access to a lot of great deal flow and I got partnered with an investment bank. And so this investment bank was taking large upfront six-figure fees and then not closing on the simplest of debt transactions. And they'd been around since 1998. And so I was really learning about just the private capital markets and how inefficient the processes were and how aggressive some of these upfront fees were. And that's when I met my business partner now, who's the CEO and founder of the Upper Echelon. And he wanted to speak to the investment bank. And I was like, of course. And then after the call, I was very transparent about my experience. And I just asked a mentor that was helping me on the independent search fund side, like curious, like, what do you think of this business model? And he kind of said, if he can solve this problem, like, incredible. It's a big, hard problem to solve, moving capital in the private markets, but no one's done it in the way without the transactional fees and thinking of more of it in a different light. So I pitched myself. He gave me a target to raise capital and brought me on as a co-founder.
Excellent. And how did you, like, other than speaking with trusted advisors and looking at, how did you know this would be scalable and VC backable potentially?
To be honest with you, I didn't really know at the start. I'm not going to lie to you. I was still, for me, it was a very new ecosystem. I don't come from the private capital space at all. I was really not the one of, hey, I'm going to go out and pitch this business model to VCs.
Yeah.
I was more brought in as like, okay, how do we actually build the operating process for this to be able to scale? So the whole VC world, the angels, the family offices was fairly new to me when I got involved with DFX. Obviously, Upper Echelon. Obviously, at that time, this investment bank was working with a lot of different RIAs, and I was exposed through that side. But, I really didn't have a black book of, VCs.
So how'd you do it? Tell me.
Well, I was already nurturing folks, obviously, for the deals that we were looking at to acquire. So that community, like finding my M&A community, very much opened up my first checks going into the Upper Echelon. And that was because of their pain point of working with business brokers and, Biz Buy Sell and all of the Axial, all the different marketplaces out there. So that was definitely friends, I would say, was the first couple of check that we'd been sharing deal flow for a very long time on the independent search fund space. But then really for me, what helped us a lot was a lot of LinkedIn outreach. It was my other company is an automation tool. So it's like a white label. And so I very much was like, okay, how do we build our top of funnel relationships? Yeah. And Jesse had a nice foundation, but he definitely didn't have, the network that we have today. So it was very much, I think on his side, he was very much focused more on larger ticket writers and nurturing those. And I was very much more focused on maybe smaller family offices, angels, and so on and so forth.
And when you say large ticket versus smaller ticket, what are you thinking?
We were more talking about institutional capital, so speaking with VCs, which for us did not go well.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting just to hear their feedback. Yeah.
So I was just meeting with, a VC, but also someone who's working on a project, and he was like, "Yeah, I called up my friend. I saw him at this conference, and we're doing this new thing, and yeah, he's coming in for 100,000." Like, I think it's interesting when people are talking to individuals And this is something I work with my clients. I'm like, you got to size them up correctly. And
Yeah.
that sounds so rude. That sounds really rude. But you don't want to go in to someone who can write a $250,000 check or a $100,000 check and have them write a $25,000 one.
Yes.
Yeah. So, is that when you were talking to potential investors, did you have an idea of how much money they could invest?
I think for us, we try to build a relationship first. It depends on how they've come into our ecosystem. But normally we have a gauge whether we've kind of done our own due diligence. My business partner is like a former CIA agent. He is incredible at just due diligence on
Wow.
people. So much so that we had, unfortunately, one of our lawyers introduced us to a local angel investor, and we found out the day that he was actually committing to us the check name that he was involved in like a fraudulent case,
Mm.
and so we had to decline the check. So I think for us, it's always been around who do we know in our network where we can find out a little bit information if it's a new contact.
Mhm.
But then once we've built the relationship, of course, we're gauging, hey, how much are you actually wanting to ride and what does that look like?
Yeah. And so when you talked about LinkedIn outreach, can you
Yeah.
tell me more?
Yeah. As far as my process,
Yeah. Who you were targeting, your process.
yeah, so for us, it was mainly focusing on strategic angels where they could provide more than just capital.
Mhm.
So, for example, we brought on the CIO of Verizon. So he was at EMC that got acquired by Dell for $72 billion. And so he was local in Boston. We invited him to one of our and that's the really thing that I think we nailed was we're not saying, hey, are you actively writing checks or hey, this is my pitch deck. It was like, hey, curious of your experience in da da da. We're hosting a local Boston private capital event. Would love for you to join us. So, very much like an open ended question and then a value prop of either an event so we can meet in person or something that was a little bit unique. And I think that's where people really go wrong with LinkedIn. It's like, let me just shove my deck down your throat because I'm important and nothing else matters. And it's like, no one cares. So I think that's our approach was very much focused on hyper local at the start. How can we make relationships where we can come and build rapport quicker? And then as we kind of, went through the Boston ecosystem, we then focused more on advisors. So anyone that could, like, because of Vic coming in, it was like we matched him with advisory shares, and that worked really well at the start because then they're starting to open up other doors for you. And then it just becomes like this snowball effect of hopefully becoming a lot easier.
Yeah. And when you were throwing, because you throw a lot of events,
Yes.
and I've seen like the founder walk, which I have not made it to yet, but I want to. When you're thinking about events for investors,
Yeah.
what are you focused mainly on value through business value, or is there some? Because I see a need just through the work that I do,
Yeah.
that sometimes VCs just need a space to be human
Yeah.
and have a little bit of fun
Yeah.
and a little bit of whimsy. I don't know if there's a business around that, but so how do you structure, like, how do you figure out what's going to be helpful to them?
We try our hardest to do things that are unique. And even though the walk seems like, oh, it's so simple, but I think being able to give an experience, like even though a walk is a very simple experience, anything that is involved where people's exactly like you said, they're just human.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone goes on a walk like where and I think that that's our focus with the upper echelon is it's not just putting on an event, getting the people in the room, but how do we curate this in a way where people get to actually build rapport a lot quicker? And so what we found is like, this sounds a little unconventional, but for our investors, they love our poker events
Yeah.
and having a very small, intimate room where it's not, we're not speaking about deals, but we're just building relationships and so much good comes out of that. So same thing, what we're doing for Art Basel for our Inner Circle event is we're doing at the Soho House. We're mixing in art, culture, and some incredible investors. And so that's really what we're focusing on with founders is how do we give them the ability to build better relationships and less on the pitching.
Yeah. And, I don't know how to say this without being super offensive. I think it's okay. But like in our heads, some people might make fun of the fact that a lot of VCs go to Burning Man. Not me. Some people might. But when you really think about it, it's they're immersing themselves in a situation where they're able to shut off the business a little bit, I think, and just experience and be present. Right. And those are the key things that I think a lot of people just generally in our world who are business people are missing.
Yeah, I struggle with it myself. I
Yeah.
struggle to switch off. And I think the more that I've gone through my own mental health challenges, the more that I realize that it's like it's a non-negotiable. And so what I'm actually really excited about, coming off your Burning Man is we have a partnership with a retreat in Wyoming that every Saturday they get their local LPs together
Yeah.
and they do this community event in Wyoming.
That's cool.
So we're focusing exactly like you said, bringing those right founders into those experiences with our high net worths and our family offices and put themselves a little bit outside of their comfort zone from the norm. But you notice that deals do happen quicker if you collect the data on how someone will build a relationship where you have a little bit more personal element, whether you just went to a private capital happy hour.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. I have not yet done Burning Man. I would love to. But I do agree with you that the more you can meet investors outside of these conferences when they actually have their guard down,
Yeah.
the quicker I feel like you build a better relationship.
But also in an intentional and not necessarily transactional way.
Yeah. Agreed.
That's what I think. And I don't know, like I know that when I was running my startup, like I had stopped long distance running because I was just ruminating over things. And so I moved to like CrossFit and HIIT and things where like you're just trying to stay alive
Yeah.
instead of thinking about your business accounts. And I'm a surfer and like that's also what, so I think that people just in general, especially people in high pressure environments like New York or LA or the US, San Francisco, the Bay Area, are looking for experiences where they can turn off that part of their brain for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it also allows you to creatively solve problems
Yeah.
by disconnecting.
Absolutely agreed. I do boxing
Oh, yeah.
and it really sharpens up my brain because it's like that's you can't think about anything else.
So good.
And so I totally agree. And that's why I'm excited to, in Q1 of next year, we're doing kind of like a female series where we're just taking women and giving them a new experience, whether it's through Pilates and bringing founders together. And that's what I love to do is like, how can we mix hobbies in with work? And I generally enjoy them. So I've noticed that more people enjoy them because it is a little bit, and I'm over drinking alcohol.
Yeah. I'm not over it, but I don't do so much of it. But I do see that, like, I think there's a knitting circle in Brooklyn of VCs. I think that there's,
Interesting.
different avenues where people are just trying to find a way to be with community, but not necessarily be focused on the transactions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, you should look it up. Audrey Pagano, I think, is running a knitting circle.
I love that.
I don't know what the terms are though. I don't know if that's yeah, I haven't showed up. I don't think knitting is gonna be on my bucket list.
Me neither, but
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I'd probably make a really ugly scarf. That's
Yeah.
all. So when you were raising money, what were some of the tough conversations that you had like while you were trying to close people? And how did that go? Like what do you think your hit rate was of talking to people and closing them?
I don't know my hit rate. I would love to know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting so when I realized the process of fundraising, because I hadn't gone out and really raised money myself, I was really leaning on my business partner because he had more experience with supporting founders on raising capital and working for an RIA. I realized that is my strength, is building out a process. But because I came into it, him already raising a very small amount, I was kind of leaning on him. And then as I kind of saw this is a lot more work than I realized. That's when I built my process and really made us stick. I'm a big Notion fan. So we have a Notion portal of pretty much when I started it, I didn't backtrack, but it was all of our current investors probably for the last 4 months, and we kept that up to date. And I think one hack that really helped me was we didn't at the start do the DocuSend, but now that's, you can transfer that data of anyone that's obviously looked at your deck for more than, let's say, 2 minutes. We've then moved them across to Notion. I think the hard part for me at the start was me not having experience in private capital per se, because I was partnered with an investment bank, but I really wasn't working for it. It was more of a commission structure. There was some uncomfortable conversations for me, and I feel like I just wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
And I think even it was very intimidating for me. Like at the start, it was really like I would nurture a relationship, but then I would hand it over to my business partner to close.
Yeah.
And I realize no one gives you a playbook on how to speak to investors.
Yeah.
And I think as a female that doesn't have, was a dropout, kind of has a bit of a interesting background as far as my entrepreneurship journey. Like I didn't have a structured approach. It made it quite uncomfortable for me at times, just not knowing how to handle conversations. But obviously, you get the hang of it. You start to understand there's common themes. But I think like even something like your podcast would have helped me so much, just listening to more people's experiences. And that's why we do a lot of pitch events now. And I focus on just, women founders and women investors. And I've created this ecosystem so other founders can come and just see like what types of questions are, different types of investors asking.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of work I do with founders in terms of, okay, we do the pitch and then what happens?
Right.
And I'm always like, okay, you need to do these couple things before you end the call. Like you need to understand what their process is like. You need to ask if they're interested. Like you need to qualify them. Are they moving forward or are they not moving forward? And at that point, I tell them if they're raising, at that point, I'm like, it's binary. If they're not raising, there's a whole range. But like, are they moving forward in your process or not? Right. And asking for the close.
Yeah.
And getting the reps in, the practice of being like, so are you interested? And letting them talk. And then like saying, how much do you think you want to invest? And setting a high reference point. Like, right, like moving that along versus, because I had a lot of conversations when I was raising money where you end the conversation, you're like, okay, bye. Nice to see you.
And it's like an awkward first date. It's like, are you texting first? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And I think again, like no one gives you that framework. Yeah. And there was definitely some conversations at the start where like you just like get ghosted and you're like, what did I do wrong? But I think one thing that I've always added in at the end of a conversation is I would love to hear your feedback. Like just give it to me exactly, what are you thinking? Where could I have like improved on my pitch? And then that kind of naturally fed me into, well, let's decide on what are our next steps off of this conversation. Am I sending you more information on company? And so that's the part where I liked that intro to the close for me.
That's cool.
Because I feel like everyone wants some founder that is coachable.
Yeah.
So if you're asking for feedback and you're giving that space, you feel like you learn so much on how to refine your business model, your execution on how you go through and talk to investors.
I love the way you said that because it shows different approaches. Like for me, I'm kind of like, so what do you think? I think a little bit more, but that's perfect. Like asking for feedback is wonderful because sometimes it's just words and you have to filter the feedback, but it does help then say, so what do you think our next steps are? I love that. That's collaborative. That's getting them on the team. That's very cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add that to the list.
And I just think investors will probably say something that they wouldn't have normally said if you open up to say like, hey, I'm ready for the hard feedback.
Yeah, for sure. I love that because sometimes when I'm meeting with founders, if they don't ask for that, I might not give them the really hard stuff.
And I also think though, you can learn so like investors have such interesting perspectives that are so different from founders. So like take what they say and make sure you don't take everything of it, but like make sure you take the things out of that. They go, oh, you know what? That actually resonated with me. That's an area of improvement.
Yeah. And, investors see a lot of pitches. So sometimes I mentor with the Founder Institute, which I led for a year. And I saw a pitch the other day and I was like, well, I've seen a lot of these pitches. I was like, yours is really good, but like I've seen a lot of pitches in this space, which prompted that founder to say, well, we've done X, Y, and Z, and this is how far along. I'm like, well, you should have said that up front. It's like, what's separating you from all the other people that have the same idea? It's really critical that you let people know that so they can figure out, are you an outlier? Are you trustable? Are you the one to bet on? Or is this just another idea that's in the same vein as everyone else?
100% agree. And I think another thing that I've realized is I want to know why you very early.
Yeah.
And people leave that to the last. And I'm like, well, this is great. Anyone could do it. Like,
Yeah.
why you?
Yeah.
And I think that that's one part I've realized at the start, my business partner very much nails is like, why are we doing it? And like, why now?
Mm-hmm. I love that. Very cool. So what has been surprising to you in moving from an exited bootstrapped founder to now an investor-backed company?
This is a little savage, but
Give it to me. I love this.
what I've realized is a lot of investors really have no idea. And I think that we as founders see them as the holy grail. And when you get so many no's, it was hard for me. But what I've come to realize is that the people that have the same pain points as you and they have the same passion around your business model, they are your best allies. And I think the more you can, for me, what I've realized is the more you can lean on strategic capital and not just capital, the more you're going to set yourself up for success. And I didn't really realize that so much at the start. But one of my first checks was someone that we issued advisory shares with. And because he comes from more of that corporate America background, he actually hasn't been an asset to us whatsoever. And he's never been in a startup. And I don't think that people that come from this corporate America background really understand how difficult it is to get an idea off the ground.
Yeah.
And so I think the more you can align yourself with, this is actually what I need from strategic capital. And if I get this, my ball is going to be moved so much quicker. And so I've really now been able to ask the tough questions on, what are you going to provide back to us? Because otherwise, it's sometimes it's a little bit more of a headache than it is of a blessing, especially if you're starting off with smaller checks.
100%.
Yeah.
And, when I had my one of my companies, I brought on some people from corporate that were big names and were exciting and they opened doors that way.
Yeah.
But then, when I met with them and they were giving me advice on the company, it didn't translate.
Yeah. And it's so different. Like when you were going out and building maybe the foundations 20 years ago for this larger company that had more money than know what to do with. Now, as a COO, it's like it's so different, the landscape. So that's why I'm really excited with writing my own angel checks of knowing like this capital is really not where I see my biggest value. It's actually being able to give you my playbook of how I've built our operating system. And that's why I'm really excited to become in as a strategic angel, because I feel like I want to do it now while I'm building, because I can provide so much more value than in 10 years when I'm just chilling.
Yeah.
I just think that I'm so much more interested in having people that have been through something recently rather than, a little bit more of a seasoned investor, but doesn't really understand the landscape right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because things are changing so fast.
It's so hard to keep up with.
Yeah. How do you keep up? Like, how do you keep, what information sources do you consume generally that help you stay on top of things?
I would say that I don't try and keep up with too many things. I really focus on my business partner and where he sees the future of technology. He just wrote 2 books around the future of the entrepreneurship window and how AGI is for a lot of, software as a service companies, a lot of things are going to be changing.
Yeah.
But I try to not stay too much in the loop, and that sounds terrible because I do find that there's so much going on in the world that it can be very overwhelming, especially right now. And I'm just someone that tries to stay in my lane. And if I'm doing anything that specifically I need to do research with, it's really ChatGPT that's pulling a lot of the data points for
Mhm.
me rather than focusing on like different news channels. Because just what I've noticed is it's just so skewed.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm not yeah, I'm more focused right now on this VCPE program that I'm doing at Columbia, and I feel like that's enough information for me right now.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've done everything the opposite way around, and now I'm going to school. And it was really for me because coming into the whole VCPE landscape was very new.
Mhm.
This 9-month program at Columbia, I felt like gave me the foundations of what I wish I knew coming into this company.
Yeah.
So the ecosystem, everyone's an investor or they're a founder or they're, some kind of C-suite. So it's a very small weekly commitment, but it forces me to get back to the basics of just absorbing the foundations, which I really appreciate. And the community that's a part of this ecosystem is fun because there's a lot of folks that are in New York, so it creates this new layer of getting access. And that's what I've realized, like from one of my good friends that's at Harvard, they have so much access going into these Ivy League schools
Oh, yeah.
and being an entrepreneur. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, I think it's changed quite a bit, as the world has evolved, right? Um, Stanford has always been a lot of access. Harvard has a tremendous amount of access, and I think that's becoming more and more a part of, I don't know, the curriculum, but part of the community.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have to talk to you about the whole Columbia program after this. Is that in real life or is that virtual or both?
It's both. It's a bit of both.
Cool. That's very cool. I've been eyeing it. Um, do you have any advice for founders who are just getting started raising capital?
I have a lot of advice. Kind of slim that down. So I think, as you mentioned, really setting out your framework and sticking to some kind of framework until you realize that you need to like update that. But I think that we as founders are very sometimes too optimistic. And I think you need to be able to say, you know, as you said at the end of the call, gauge where that person's at
Mhm.
and kind of say them as like a very soft maybe because you really don't know. And I think what I realize is my business partner wants to believe the best in everyone. And that can be hard when that's not true at the start and you get your hopes up and then you go through this emotional roller coaster. So I think I advise folks to stay a little bit more neutral and not get attached. And that's very hard when you're building a relationship and you get really excited, especially about the future of your company with that injection of capital or whatever that looks like. But I very much noticed that I had to keep my emotions more in check when you're going through this journey, because otherwise it can be, just taxing on the mindset. And then I think it's really finding other founders and building a relationship with them that have raised from your dream VC, angel, family office, because they're going to be such a good warm intro for you. And I think if you just focus on building relationship with investors, you only have so many investors in your network and you can only do so much outreach at once, and outreach should be customized to that investor. But founders, I find, are so much more open if you ask the right questions and you come in with like, I'm curious of your experience with working with XYZ firm. So I think that's a better angle if you start building that rapport sooner rather than later.
100%. And I think I just want to underline a couple things that you said there. It's like real relationships.
Yeah.
Founders that have been funded can be a great source of warm intros, but also advice and community, et cetera. Like so many things there. Partnerships.
Right.
And then customization or being real versus as automation gets more easy, I feel like taking that time to actually do the work is what sets some people apart, right? Like I know even with outreach with me, like if someone follows up and they've actually, like if I ignore their messages a couple times and then they follow up with something that's really very clear that they are understanding what I want, I got to respond.
Absolutely.
You
I
know,
totally
it's,
agree.
yeah.
And I think the other part, which people don't do enough, is when you meet an investor in real life or a founder that has a similar, ICP for an investor, is take a photo with them,
Oh,
write up a really nice email. It doesn't have to be long. It can be literally just one sentence.
mhm.
Um, and make sure that you don't go into an ask straight away, but you're just saying, "Hey, thank you. I saw you." And that leaves a good imprint on people.
Mm.
And make sure that what I've noticed is people forget about tracking the CRM of who you meet in person, because you never know who that relationship, like what I've done before in the past is I knew someone was very well connected into this family office space. And I was like, I would just love to get feedback on my product. And people, if you're an entrepreneur or you're an investor, you're so open to giving someone feedback. And so that's another way of, if you're struggling of, hey, I'm a little too transactional, I found that being that kind of team player and saying like, can I help you out with anything, or kind of give first mentality gets you so much further in life than just trying to make it all about you.
Yeah. And then also treating them as humans.
Of course. Of course.
Like there's a VC who we were talking about this show, Couples Therapy, right on Showtime.
Yeah.
And he and his partner, business partner, were like, "Oh yeah, we were trying to get in this." And like, I see that there's open calls right now for the show. I don't know that they're going to do that,
Right.
but just sending something like that. Oh, I know we talked about this. Like,
Exactly.
check this out.
100%. People forget the basics.
Yes.
And we want to go straight to, let's get a deal done. But there's just so many steps in between that has to be nurtured.
Mhm.
And I think that you're normally putting yourself in a worse position because you don't even know their investment thesis and you're sending them a deck. I'm
Yeah.
confused.
That's ridiculous. And I love the taking a photo with them so that you remember them and they remember you. And then, like, even more simply than that, I hear a lot of VCs say that people just don't even follow up.
Yeah.
They'll stand in line for 30 minutes to talk to somebody. They'll get the card and then they don't follow up.
Yep.
It's wild.
It is wild. Luckily, I think people have gotten a lot better with the QR codes and it building a CRM for you. But I do find, for me, I'm normally taking photos of the business cards. And there's a hack now on your iPhone where if you click on that business card, it'll actually come up with a full contact of everything that the photo can see.
Wow.
So it'll input everything. And then what I've started to do is do hashtags in my contacts. So if I meet another founder or investor, I kind of have some like CRM capabilities in my phone. So I think taking the time after events to sit down and really be like, who did I meet? How can I help them?
Yeah.
It comes back in tenfold.
Yeah. And if you're going to spend the time going to an event, you might as well like make it worthwhile.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's really a waste.
It's only one relationship that
Yeah.
you need. You don't need a million in order to move the needle forward, I don't think.
Yeah. And, when I started my career, I started working at an agency ages ago, and it made me a better family member because I learned skills about keeping in touch with my clients that I then applied to my grandfather, et cetera, et cetera. I think that there's some of that discipline that you can apply to any relationship, either personal or, eventually investor relationship.
Absolutely.
Keeping in touch, reminding them who you are, giving them updates. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Thank God for group chats.
Or not. I don't love great group chats. I have too many. I've been archiving them lately.
I know, because my family's so far away. It's like, let's loop them into one.
I mistakenly archived a WhatsApp group chat the other day, and I was like, I don't mind. That's okay. I can go in and check on it when I want to.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what has changed since you closed the round? You have more resources, What has it opened up for you?
What has changed? Yes, we have more resources. I think for us, um, it's very much been coming into the evolution of our business model evolving because of AI and everything that's happening in the private capital landscape. So I think for us, a lot has changed
Mhm.
since raising capital. And I think when you do have institutional capital, there are things that just naturally evolve quicker, which I'm grateful for because I love things evolving quickly.
Mhm.
So um, there's obviously is still a lot to do when you're an early stage company, but I'm proud of the foundations that we've laid. And I feel like we're only just getting started.
Excellent. And how has your job evolved since you got money in?
There has been some things that I've been able to actually take off my plate recently with a new hire, which is really exciting.
Nice.
A leadership hire, but not much has changed for my role per se, but I have noticed that eventually I will step out of the COO position. And we've kind of made that roadmap, which I'm excited about.
Mhm.
I think operations is really built for someone that isn't front facing as much. And I think doing everything that we're doing with events, it's hard to it's going to become very hard to do both
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Because if you're literally at events, you can't, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's a full-time job.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
before moving to New York, I was very much more of a hermit, so I'm like, "Wow, I realize it's hard to be outside and on Slack 24/7."
Yeah, for real. Can you tell me a little bit about your Founder AI Lab, the Founder AI Labs? What is that all about?
Yes. So what we've realized is as the barrier to entry for entrepreneurs is becoming extremely low,
Mhm.
anyone can start up a company and build a product, build an MVP, get it to market very quickly, that there is a huge intake of founders wanting to raise capital
Mhm.
that are first-time founders and they don't fully understand what's happening in the private capital markets. It is harder than ever for a pre-seed stage company because of the supply and demand. If you're able to see that many more opportunities, I mean, for investors, that why can't they go and incubate that company itself, right? So I think that we're very much focused on how can you do a lot more with a lot less. And that comes from learning the full capabilities of the technology that's out there today. We've become very good with using, Zapier to connect these tools together in different workflows. And what I've realized with meeting a lot of founders and hearing their pitch decks and seeing their ecosystem is what they're looking to raise, they could do that with a quarter of the amount on today's technology. So it's an 8-week program. We look at every department. We get an expert in. Some of them are on our advisory board and some of them are external. But it's very much focusing on how do you pretty much stand up a department within the new era of technology.
Sounds amazing.
It's a lot of fun because we get to then make sure that we keep on top of everything. So it's a win-win scenario for us.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So, when is this an ongoing? Is it cohort based? Like, what is it all about?
Yeah, so it's going to be cohort based. So our first cohort actually kicked off this week, which is
Mhm.
super exciting. But then once we finish this cohort, there'll be 2 intakes per year.
Mhm.
So one in Q1 and one in Q3.
Awesome. How does your company define success differently now than when you first started with them?
It's literally the opposite way around. Our business model at the start was very much focused on, scalability, and now we're very much focused on trust, integrity, and more, quantity over quality over quantity. So, I would say our entire business model has changed, and things that we said that we would never do at the start, also has changed. So I just feel like you can never say never as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and as the world has evolved, you need to as well.
Yeah. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so we at the start very much prided ourselves in, um, never being involved with. Well, I wouldn't say never. Let me rephrase that. we said that we're not taking transactional fees, and that was very much one of our core, differentiators. But as we have realized, especially in the lower to middle market, M&A transactions,
Mhm.
IBs have investment banks have a very crucial part in those transactions happening. And so we actually have an investment bank that we're in due diligence with because they were partnered with a platform that they don't have equity in. And so they very much want to come in as a concierge service, which for us doesn't cannibalize our ecosystem. It doesn't mean that every transaction there's going to be a success fee, but for the ones that actually need it,
Mhm.
and they are more of that back end implication
Mhm.
to our platform, we're very much open to it. And it's funny because I do believe in, like, we met them at one of our partners event, iGlobal Forum, and they have a lot of family offices. And they also said that they don't allow investment banks into their events. And they've been letting some investment banks. And this was the one that we met. So I just realized that, yeah, as an entrepreneur, it's you're going through an evolution.
Yeah, for sure. And, before we turned on the cameras, you were asking, like, you asked me with my business, do I turn people down? And I said, yes, I do turn people down. But we experimented with something this summer, which we had never done before, which is taking a lump sum at the end based on, if when someone's successful. And, we need to find a way to do that legally because there's legal ramifications. But you have to be open to different things.
You do.
Because on the one hand, it's very clean when you have a fee model up front, but that can be seen as a hardship or exclusionary to some founders,
Yes.
right? And I don't know where we're going to end up with that, but like you've got to be able to evolve, you've got to be able to test things out and see what'll work for companies.
100%. And also, if you believe in the founder and you have an investor,
Mm.
you're shooting yourself in the foot by not being able to have some skin in the transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, do you have any controversial tips or opinions on fundraising?
Controversial. I'm sure I do. Let me think about that. Controversial tips. I really believe that VCs are struggling right now. Like the more general partners that I've been speaking with, the companies that they've invested 3 years ago don't have a moat around their company. So I think a lot of investors are a little bit more hesitant than ever,
Mhm.
especially around this buzz of AI and building on top of all these different layers. So I just worry about founders being like, I want to be a VC backed company. Like, why? Like, you're spending so much time. And so I'm very cautious of when someone is just fixated on VC. Is it the shiny toy because that's where the unicorns have been? Or is that actually what fits your business model?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's controversial, but I just believe that that's what I've been seeing in the market.
Yeah, no, that's something I believe very much getting the right capital for your business. And the right capital could be bootstrapping. As you
Right.
know, the right capital could be revenue. The right capital could be strategic corporate investment. The right capital could be grants. It could be angels. It all depends on what you want, what the end goal is. And you need to understand what you're signing off on when you do take on those different types of capital.
Yeah.
Because if you agree to take on VC investment, you're shooting for the moon. You gotta,
Yeah.
because that's how they make their money.
Yeah.
And I don't have an opinion that one's evil and one's good, but it's just about right sizing the capital that you bring or choosing right for your company and for your own personality, I guess, as well. And plans.
100%. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I don't think one is better. I actually think most of the time, family office money, they're not coming in to get their hands dirty as they are with VCs. So
Mm.
everything has plus, pros and cons as you kind of work through your own due diligence and learn about, okay, what is that investor going to bring outside of the capital? But still coming back to the foundations of, am I spending too much time fundraising when I actually should be focusing on building my business? And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's what a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in with is maybe if I spent more time building a company,
Yeah.
I would have gotten that traction and therefore I would be at a higher valuation and I would actually be, moving things forward a lot quicker.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Absolutely. How can people use Upper Echelon? How can founders use Upper Echelon to help move things forward?
Yeah, so we've decided to run the founder AI labs into the upper echelon.
Mhm.
So that means any founder that's coming into our ecosystem has to go through the labs in order to have access to the platform. The inner circle that we've built inside of the upper echelon is just for high net worth family offices and tier one fund managers for them to share portfolio co-investment opportunities in a kind of like a gated ecosystem. So it's not just, how much assets under management, do you have enough dry powder? What is your investment thesis? But it's really looking at the core fundamentals of what do you value?
Mhm.
Where is your long-term vision of your investing career going? And how do you work with people? And so we actually spend a half day with folks of learning about who they are as a person, what interests them, to then build these really cool experiences where we bring the founders that are coming out of our AI founder labs into those experiences. So whether that's an online, investor roundtable and we're bringing in a founder,
Mhm.
or whether that's a 3-day retreat in Wyoming, it really just depends on who are the investors that are going to be in that experience. But we're very much focused now on really building an ecosystem with like-minded folks that are trusted and vetted
Mhm.
because we believe in the future of AI. Trust is really what's going to be able to get deals done a lot more quickly and efficiently. So for founders, it's being a part of our ecosystem. So we do have a free membership. So if you want to join, obviously, online events, we also have collateral that our investment networks bring to us. So we're building out a real top of funnel for all different types of communities. So iGlobal Forum, they focus on independent sponsors and capital providers, but outside of their conferences, there's no way for their ecosystem to share deal flow, events, and education.
Mhm.
So we provide the technology for these groups to be able to operate more efficiently in the private capital markets.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And
So there's a lots of different communities inside of the upper echelon. It's not just ours. And that's what I think it makes it so interesting is because we've built it for private capital. It's a lot more, you can learn a lot more about a founder or an investor a lot quicker because it's structured in the way of really knowing like where have you come from in your investing career and same, from a founder, you're able to see a pitch video and 50 to 100 data points in a way that's I feel like it's a lot more digestible than looking at a spreadsheet.
yeah, yeah, probably I would agree with you. How do you stay mentally, emotionally, and physically healthy while running a company?
I think for me, I try to not see it as let me get balance in every single week, but let me be in a season of whatever my company or my mental state needs.
Mhm.
So I, at this early stage of any company, I try to be very flexible with myself. But then I know, like this week, I'm at a conference for the next 2 days. So working out and my whole routine is not as structured.
Mhm.
But then over the weekend, I'll definitely make sure that I kind of go off the grid a little bit. So I think for me, it's definitely moving my body, making sure I try and have some no screen time mornings and just focus on whatever I feel like I need to that morning. But I think the other part for me is, as you said, the human connection part, because you can, as a founder, get swamped in your own world of needing to execute.
Mhm.
And I think it is hard for us to be like, well, I'll just move that coffee catch up a week back. And then all of a sudden you haven't seen your friends in a month
Mhm.
and then you get really depressed. So I try to make sure that I plan out just catching up with friends because otherwise if I don't plan it, it won't happen.
You're reminding me that I need to do some of that. Maybe that's why I was so anxious this weekend with a very busy week ahead of me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's really, really key.
it is.
And I find when I'm swirling, like doing some physical activity gets rid of some of that
Yeah.
energy.
Absolutely. I think what I've realized, especially, you also have to be a good role model for your team.
Yeah.
And I like to start work very early, but now I'm scheduling to send some things because I'm like, I don't want you to feel like you have to respond to this right now because I'm a psychopath. So I'm very much become more mindful of trying to be a good example and show that, you don't have to work all the time
Mm.
to be, successful.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Um, what do your support structures look like in your life?
My business partner is my best friend.
Mhm.
So I'm very lucky to have such a grounded, level-headed human as a co-founder, as a founder. And I think for me, my my support system comes from a small group of people. Less is more for me, but it's more about how comfortable do I feel to be my multifaceted self? And if you can see most of my layers in my life, then I would say we have a pretty good friendship.
Yeah.
But I'm new to the US, so it's definitely been challenging because you don't have family members or so definitely the holiday season I would sometimes just work because that was easier than, going to someone else's Thanksgiving event.
Mhm.
But now I'm like pushing myself outside of my comfort zone to be like, no, just even if you don't feel like going, try and go and do some community event because I've noticed that I made one of my really good friends from going to like a sauna and ice bath founder session.
Mhm.
And so I think like I've just focused more on pushing myself outside of my comfort zone in New York, and it's very much paid off. So I'm grateful.
Yeah, my our engineer here was talking to me about the bathhouse, which has I think one in Williamsburg as well.
Yes.
One in Chelsea, one he was like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love meeting people that love the same things that I do outside of work. So I think that's very much been a focus of like not so much a support system do I have immediately for everything, but I've just found some nice friends that I think has become, moving to a new city. I've only been here two months, so still fresh,
Very fresh.
very fresh.
I had no idea.
Yes.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your fundraising journey because it really helps other people understand what they need to do, right? This is what we're all about. We're trying to show people that are coming behind us, especially diverse founders and female founders, what's possible and how to make it happen. And so your words are incredibly helpful. And I've just started getting feedback of people like I've watched every episode. I'm like, oh God, I'm so sorry. But it's the guests that make it great for the people who are watching.
No, I take my hat off to you because running a podcast is not hard. I mean, you have an incredible sponsor, but it is a lot of work to curate the right questions, the right experience. And you made me feel so comfortable. And I just love that it's a woman talking about fundraising and not another white male. So I just think that this resource is going to help so many people. And I'm grateful to be on this podcast. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm Helena Fogarty, and this was Inside the Round.